who we are, our identity is tied up into land, it's tied up into water, it's tied up into culture, it's tied up into heritage, and all those things we interact with on those levels with the land and with the waters. This is our land, this is where we're tied to, this is our territory, this is where this is where our ancestors are buried, this is where they went into the ground, and you can't really talk about us giving up our plight so that we can become Canadians, because they say, well, then you got to give up all your land, you got to give up all who you are to go and become somebody else. I can see where non-native people that are coming here are coming from some place what they think is worse. They're coming to a better place. Whereas if I give up my stuff, I'll be worse off. That's how I see it anyway.
Steve and I are doing research on Georgian Bay, but specifically on coal poise and Owen Sound. Owen Sound is of interest because the harbor has contaminants that are trapped underneath the sediment. So any dredging that could happen could release these sediments or resuspend them, and then they can be traveled throughout the bay and affect the ecosystem. There's been barely any research in these areas at all the last 10, 20 years, so we need to get some starting information before more industrialization is present here. So we're hoping to make doing research in this area an annual thing, so that you can actually see things as they change and then know that what you need to respond on and what you can do to help it.
Doppler current profiler, and it has 3 sonar heads on it, and what it does is it hangs off of the buoy here and it emits sonar, and then it picks up very tiny particles in the water column, and then for each meter of water it will give an estimate about the direction and the velocity of the water that's flowing. So these units are extremely helpful for telling us what's happening in terms of the water currents in the bays, and that specifically with regards to the contaminated harbor for Owen Sound. If there is any dredging, any resuspension of the contaminants, then this unit will help us figure out where those contaminants are going to go by tracking the water currents. And those water currents, they can change on a dime. We did point samples, 1 sample for each location, and then we have one series, we call it the temporal series, where we went back 3 times so that we could see how much variation there is over time. Right. And this is all just in 1 month. This is a very preliminary first cut. Yeah. But it's the first time anybody's done it. And I didn't know if I mentioned, but do you see any other research boats out here?
Negative.
None. There are none.
My name's Ryan Lozon, and I work for the Chippewas of Nawash, unceded First Nation, as a fisheries assessment biologist. I started about a little over 7 years ago. I can't speak for the 2 First Nations, but I believe they are tied directly to the land and waters as far as culture and so on goes. And so in order to be able to protect their identity, they need to understand what's going on in the territories and protect those rights and interests, which is why I think they have such a strong interest in partnering with the University of Guelph and developing those research programs. There's an increasing amount of development that's being proposed in the territory, and in order for the First Nations to consult from a technical level on those kinds of projects, they need to have that understanding from a scientific perspective on what the effects may be of these proposals.
So Western scientists have a way of being and a way of thinking, which is in many ways it's very intractable. It's very difficult sometimes to get a Western scientist to explain their knowledge and the process that they use to get that knowledge in terms that non-scientists would understand. Where the Indigenous communities, they need to explain themselves, their knowledge system, how it works, and their knowledge in ways that the Western scientists can understand. So basically, the Nawash tasked me with the responsibility of putting some serious effort into the development of functional, effective tools for that reciprocal dialogue between the knowledge systems.
You have your Aboriginal view that you're trying to, your political Aboriginal view that you're trying to put forward. And then you have a legal view and you have a science view. And so you got to try and make the most out of the resources you have in terms of having the teams to support what it is that you think you want done, whether you want to stop some project, be involved, minimize the project, make it a better project. So all of those things have to be unfolded at the same time, right?
I'm not a specialist in Indigenous knowledge systems. I'm a specialist in Western science knowledge systems. But the strategic vision of the First Nations in this regard, I think, is very progressive, because they said, let's put our sponsored guy into a science faculty position and ask him to build back to us.
We think it's important to have those people working on our side, working with us. Yeah. Even if if they don't agree to us, then you got to go back and reassess what your thinking was, because they're not just going to capitulate and give you into your thought. You need to get to that right point of saying, yeah, this is the way to think about the whole situation. So they help bring us along in that sense as well, as that they're deeper thinkers, get to that particular point, but also they still understand that we are somebody different and unique, and we need to be addressed in that aspect, in that way. And you know, the universities has this motto where there's about social justice and bringing that all about through the education. That's kind of, so that little thing kind of works out to help them as well, is that they're trying to make impactful changes, educate the people in a proper way that would make long-term, lasting, good human beings, and maybe bring change about so that Canada is able to, everybody gets brought up to a level.